us in, the lost and forsaken. Gather us in, the blind and the
All right, let's do this. Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year's. Coming to you from the Cigar Talks tonight. Seeing that it is New Year's Day, we're celebrating a little bit with our old friend Dragon's Milk by the New Holland Brewing Company. Delicious, delicious stout. One of the few barrel-aged stouts that I actually enjoy. There are some out there that they're really not good. I don't know why they put them in a barrel. It doesn't improve the flavor at all. I think they do it more as a gimmick. And there you go. Nice, beautiful, dark. Good head on it. Oh, and delicious. Also tonight, seeing that it's New Year's, we have the Maker's Mark Seasoned Cigar. Comes with the iconic wax-dipped glass-sealed tube. I wanted to show that off here before I light it up. Quite tasty. I do enjoy this cigar. Depending on the time of year and where you're at, they can actually be pretty hard to find. There is our local smoke shop here. So happened they brought some in for the Christmas season. A little bit of a bigger cigar, very dark cigar. Beautiful, beautiful cigar, though. Always have good flavor. They usually come out with very good draw. Very tasty. So tonight, don't really talk about it. I'm using a punch to punch cut my cigar. Something I've kind of been enjoying recently. Feels a little more controlled than using the guillotine. Although there are some cigars that you just have to use that guillotine for. So I'm going to get this lit up and I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Got the cigar lit. Good burn, good flavor. Could be some nostalgia in there since this is kind of one of those go-to when I see it. I feel like I got to pick it up. But I think it's a good cigar. So for tonight, let's talk about the dreaded 2020. You may have noticed the title of the video kind of gives praise to 2020. And this might be difficult for some people to listen to and kind of take in, but we should all be thankful that we went through 2020 and all the events that happened. And more importantly, we made it out the other side. Now, I'll be the first person to say that no, it's not like I was lucky and spared from any of the suffering that happened because of pandemics and closures and mass hysteria and violence and natural disasters. Quite the contrary. I ended up losing my job during this time in 2020. Part because of the pandemic and then part because of some internal conflicts that were going on. So I was one of those people who was unemployed, wondering if the state of Michigan was ever going to mail me a check. As I said, I have multiple kids. Luckily, they were homeschooled, but their extracurricular activities were taken away from them. They couldn't go and join extracurricular sports or activities, plays, go to the park even. So for children who are used to having that social structure, it was taken away from my kids just as much as it was taken away from public school kids. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I was lucky and was able to dodge the 2020 bullet, because I don't think we were. We were affected just like many others. With most situations, we had it better than some and worse than others, and a lot of it comes down to perspective, of course. But this year, and if you watched my video, the SISU video, you'll kind of understand why I'm kind of glad we went through 2020 as a people. It really made us focus in on what's important. it let us understand how fragile our society is and how quickly what we know as norm can be switched. Now, when I teach preparedness classes, I spend a good long while talking about that, how fragile our system is, and how quickly it can degrade, as we saw. But what I hope everyone can come out of this with is an understanding of, one, what's important. What is truly important in our lives? Is it football stars and big box screen movies and actors and actresses? Or is it the family unit? Is it spending time with our loved ones? Is it being with ourselves and being worried about our health and well-being and taking active measures to protect our health and well-being? When I was younger, I had the unfortunate, at the time I thought unfortunate, but now I actually think it's a very wonderful thing. I got to see my wife almost die. I was the paramedic who actually had to treat her, and there were a couple of times I didn't think I was going to be able to save her. It was a very, at the time, horrifying experience. And as I sat waiting in the OR room waiting for her to get out of surgery, if you had asked me what benefits were there, was I glad this situation happened, at the time I would have probably punched you in the nose. But I sat back, had a lot of time to reflect over the years, and that probably one single event was the greatest thing that could have happened to us as a couple and me as a person. It was amazing how stuff we used to fight about prior to her accident, we didn't fight about anymore. Stuff that we used to think was important, especially me trying to level up in my job and really focus on work, it wasn't important anymore. I didn't see a benefit or a reason to do it. Instead, I pulled myself into what was important. Being with my wife, being with my kids, being there for them. It's something I had taken for granted because it's something that was never challenged in my life. I had always had a wife. I'd always had kids. They were healthy. They were strong. Every night I came home to them. But because of that challenge, because of my wife almost dying, I fully was able to realize the finite miracle it was that I had a wife who loved me. I had kids to come home to. And I realized how much I did not fully appreciate them. And at that moment, I started changing. I put more emphasis in my family. They came first. And I used to say, well, my family always comes first, but then I'd take extra overtime shifts. I'd work during holidays and my son's birthday, and I wasn't putting them first. My hope is, as we roll the clock, go to 2021, we can look back at 2020 and have that same assessment. What did we learn about ourselves? What's important? Did we talk to ourselves and ask ourselves about our health? Have a conversation with ourselves about, okay, how often should I be washing my hands? Should I take vitamins? Maybe get some exercise? Finally address some of those health problems. Because if I have these preconceived conditions, pre-existing conditions, and I catch the dreaded plague that's out there, well, I could die from it. But if I take care of my health, take care of myself, well, I'll come out ahead. I'll be doing all right. Maybe we firmly believe that the government, no matter what would happen, would ride in and save us, only to find that many of the governmental actions, both at local, state, and federal levels, harmed us. I know a lot of people who lost their businesses, lost their sanity because of government shutdowns, being forced to close with no real explanation or recourse for where do I go next. So what's important? Is it the government going to come in and save you? Did you learn the lesson that no, they probably aren't? Good. What are you going to do with that? Maybe your political leader who you swore by, the party you swore by, left you in the dust. Well, what are you going to do with that? An amazing revelation has been given to you, a realization of who we are, what we have, and what we don't have. What's important? Perhaps you were used to going and seeing friends, and it became a very rote experience. Nothing frustrates me more than when I talk to a coworker, talk to a friend, and ask them, so what'd you do this weekend? Oh, nothing. Really, in the 48 hours since I saw you, you did absolutely nothing? And I would give them pleasantries back, tell them I'd done nothing, how's the weather, how's the kids, how's school going, yada, yada, yada. But then we were forced not to see people, not to interact with them. It really put into perspective our relationships. Were these people we call friends honestly friends? Probably. But did it allow us to see, you know what, I really should stay connected more with them. I should talk to my family more. Maybe you had a loved one who got sick. Hopefully they recovered. But realize maybe they wouldn't have. If this plague had been any different, the virulency of the strain, the mortality rates, the compounding disease issues that you have with different morbidities. What would have happened if they didn't live? Do you view them any differently? Do you treat them differently? Do you see them differently? If you don't, it's something you need to meditate on. 2020 was a blessing on many levels. Hopefully most of us took it as that, took a second to really evaluate our lives and see what's important. One thing that was important for me that I knew, but I never really acknowledged. The churches in the UP where I live, all were forced to be shut down by the bishop, not by the government. That was a big no-no, but the bishop shut them down. I found myself with a deep yearning, a need for to be in the presence of God and with the Eucharist. So when I went to Mass for the first time after about a month, I literally wept in the pew, something I really had never done before in a church setting. Even some very deeply profound retreats that I went on that were so focused on prayer life. Retreats where legitimate religious miracles even happened. I never found myself that emotionally charged. Then after not being able to go to church for about a month and finally being able to be in the presence of God in the church and receive the Eucharist again, it was an amazing feeling. One that I'll cherish for many, many years, and it's really deep in my understanding. It's matters like that 2020 is a blessing. Did you maybe go to your favorite restaurant once it was able to open back up and realize the luxury we have of being able to have ready food that we don't have to cook or plan ahead? Modern dining is a miracle of its own. To be able to go into a restaurant and order whatever you want at any time, and it's there. That's a novel idea. Perhaps it was going to play golf or bowling. Did you realize that, come to the realization that how much your life really revolves around that activity? Or the exact opposite. Did you realize how much you thought your life revolved around that activity, but really it didn't? I've talked to a couple of people who talked about they finally had to cook at home, and realizing the joy of cooking their own food. Something they never really had to do before. But now they find pleasure in it and excitement in it. Hopefully we can all reflect on 2020 in that vision, with those goggles on, of what did I learn about myself. Not many years, I can honestly say, have given us this much perspective on life, about ourselves, about our government, about our country, about our culture, about our society, about our health even, about our world. Amazing revelations can be had. And the only other thing I on the religious note that I'd like to end with, it's a quote from my uncle who's a priest. He used to always say that it's better to suffer on earth around friends and family than it is in purgatory alone. Now, granted, a lot of you probably aren't very religious, and I don't hold that against you. As you probably have gotten from many of my videos, I am quite religious. And I do embrace some of the old school religion. The suffering on earth so we don't have to suffer in purgatory or in hell. Admitting that you're not necessarily worthy to go to heaven. To understand that you are a sinner. Stuff like that. My uncle's quote really hits me. It really causes me to have pause and almost be glad for the suffering I do have on earth. I do firmly believe that when I suffer on earth, I can send it up to God. He'll take it in and help me to get grace. And that grace can be used then to get to heaven. And it's a very interesting thought process when you look at suffering with that guise. Now, I am not the type, I'm not going to grab a cat of nine tails and start whipping my back. And the original, when the Black Death hit medieval Europe, where you had monks who believed that if they suffered enough, that God would free them of this plague. I don't believe in that, of course. That is crazy. But I do believe that if we view suffering in the fact that we're going to. One, it's inescapable. You will suffer in your life, period. You'll suffer every year, period. On a monthly basis, quite possible. Weekly, all right, maybe. Daily, some people have suffers and agonies. What do they do with it? Do they let it conquer them? Do they let them defeat them? Or do they acknowledge that, yes, I am suffering, but have a place to send it? That's mine. I send mine up to God, dedicate my sufferings to maybe a individual or just no one in particular, whoever needs it. Or for myself, for me to get to heaven. Suffering in that guise is not a bad thing. One, it acknowledges that you're going to. Spoiler alert, life is not all rainbows and unicorn poop. It is very much tough. Go back to the SISU video where I talk about that. We have in our society people who believe you can go through life without any suffering. We have politicians who actively try to eliminate suffering, and it's a fool's errand. They never will be able to. But we don't have a lot of people championing suffering for a reason and dedicating it. So I'm diving deep here into the religious aspect, and I suppose of my 5 subscribers that I have who religiously watch this or who routinely watch this video. I do hope I don't scare any of you guys off. Considering I know which 5 you are, I don't think I will. Or you'll probably just Facebook message me and let me know your opinion, which is cool. I always enjoy having fun conversations about these video topics. But I think if we had that change of idea, a change of how we view stuff like pain and suffering and challenges and adversity, we as a people would excel on this planet. Because instead of letting these things conquer us, we can redirect them to build us. And another thing, kind of the closing of 2020 speech, and I promise this is where I'll be ending it now. There's another great quote that when they were closing down the lunar program with NASA, they had one of the scientists, they were interviewing him, and they said, well, why are we not going back to the moon? Like, why do we not continue our exploration and explore and possibilities of being on the moon? And I'm not really sure what his position was, but he looks square at the reporter and says, ma'am, once you've been to the moon, you always know you can go back. And it was a very amazing quote that you can use in your daily life. Once you've done it once, you know you can do it again. That quote was actually inspirational to me when I first finished, as a dyslexic, a proud dyslexic, I finished my first 50,000 word novel. And at the time, I was like, well, I'm never going to do that. I could never do that again. And then I found that quote. I knew I could do it. I'd done it once before. I was able to write those words. I lived. I survived. I did it. Why can't I do it again? I did it once. Of course I can do it again. 2020 has given us that. We survived through all this. Pandemics, poverty, social unrest, natural disasters, insert here, political discord or political strife. We survived that. We did. If you're watching this video, you survived all of that. So why can't you do it again? The answer is you can. 100%. So now you don't have to be afraid of that stuff. You survived it once. You have your methods. Maybe it's by the skin of your teeth. Maybe it was just barely I was able to scrape by and keep food on my table. I fell under that one when I became unemployed. There was that question. Well, how are we going to make bills? What are we going to do? How are we going to make the house payment? How are we going to put food on the table? But we survived it. I got another job. We kept the heat on, the lights on, kept food on the table. So the idea of becoming unemployed lessens with me now. I know I can conquer it. I did it once. I can do it again. Maybe you got the dreaded plague going around. Maybe it shouldn't fear you. You got it once. You could get over it again. That's how I think we should take 2020. It made us stronger. We know what we can and can't do. We know what we can face and what we can challenge because we've done it. So why should we be scared of the unknown future when in truth we've faced the unknown this year? And if you're watching this video, that means you got through it. And congratulations. Because that means you can get through it again if it comes up in your life again. So it's not something to be scared of. It's something to embrace even. Because chances are, if you do come up against it again, it's not a surprise. You know how to challenge it. You know how to affect it. You know how to get beyond it because you've already done it. You know what works, you know what doesn't. So anyhow, I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of my delicious Maker's Mark cigar and Dragon's Milk. Reflect upon the last 365 days. Thank God for all the blessings He's given me. Realize all the places I've succeeded and the places I need to work on, and put in perspective everything that has happened. And with that, I'll be a stronger individual, and if any of these adversities pop up again, I'll be prepared to take them on. So anyway, thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.